Welcome, everyone, to Fantasy Foresight, the podcast. We're your hosts and co-founders of FantasyForesight.com, coming to you from the Rambo Fixture Company studios. I'm Ben.
And I'm Jay.
You ready to get rolling, Jay?
You know it. Let's do this.
All right, let's go. Welcome in, everyone. It is Monday, June 17th, and we have a very special 12-team PPR Team Foresight Mock Draft episode for everyone. How you doing tonight, Jay?
Ben, how do you think I'm doing tonight? This is the first time we've got the Foresight family all together for recording on this podcast. I'm ready to go.
Before we get started, Jay, why don't you go ahead and get everybody introduced here?
All right, first up, we have at Foresight Family Man, Mr. Zack. Welcome to the show.
Hey, guys. Happy to be here.
Glad to have you, brother.
Excellent. All right, you'll find this next gentleman on Twitter at ForesightFFPT, our physical therapist specialist, Russ.
Hey, guys. Glad to be here.
Good to have you, buddy.
All right, next up, we've got Mike, who you can find on Twitter at Foresight Focus. Welcome in, Mike.
Howdy, everybody.
Don't get too excited, Mike.
I never do.
All right. Next up, you already know this gentleman. You've got the Foresight Encyclopedia at FF_Encyclopedia. Say what's up, Steve.
Hey, fellas. Usually, we're only going head-to-head in these drafts when it's the real deal Holyfield in our League of Records, so this will be fun.
All right. Welcome in, everybody. Let's get going, Ben. I'm excited.
Yes, sir. All right, everybody. Here's how it's going to work. Like I said, it is a 12-team full PPR redraft format that's going to do the normal snake buy round. The draft order is every other team is going to be a ghost team that's just going to take the best available based on the consensus ECR from Fantasy Pros out there. And so it's going to go between a ghost member and a Foresight team member. Ghost teams are just going to take the best available based on the ECR from FantasyPros.com and 12-team PPR formats. I'll announce everybody who is the best available at the time, and then they can talk through their decision for their picks and why they chose who they chose. And then we can get a little react, and then we'll go on from there. We'll see, depending on time, how many rounds we get through. We want to get through at least 4. We'll see if we can get to 5 or 6. But Jay, you got anything to add before we get started?
Let's just hope that the ghost teams aren't better than all of ours. So, guys, we got to get after this. Don't let the chalk win.
All right. First up at the 101, Ghost Team 1 takes New York Giants running back Saquon Barkley. No surprise there, Jay.
And we have already all lost because, as you know, this guy is a future Hall of Famer, according to the Foresight podcast. You know it.
At least in Jay's book. Next up, we've got our guy Zack at Foresight Family Man on the clock at the 102 spot. According to ECR, your best available is Zeke, Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara, DeAndre Hopkins, and Devontae Adams.
Well, guys, I'm actually going to skip over the running backs. Wow. The Foresight Encyclopedia has scared me off of the ADP 2, 3, and 4 coming to face their repeats and three-peats. So I'm going with DeAndre Hopkins. Hopefully he will continue the trend of a consistent wide receiver 1 return on investment.
Wow, I love it. Bucking the trend of the workhorse running back early and going wide receiver 1 overall with the number 2 selection. That's ballsy.
That's right, and it's showing a lot of respect to Steve's work there in our ADP consensus research series.
I knew somebody was reading those articles.
Which, as a reminder, you can find at FantasyForesight.com under the Foresight Encyclopedia tab. Be sure to check it out. I like it.
All right. Next up at the 103 spot, we've got Ghost Team 2. Next best available is Dallas Cowboys running back Ezekiel Elliott.
Well, you know, what can I say? It's Zeke. He's as consistent as you want to get as long as he can stay out of trouble off the field.
Yeah, and again, somebody else has reading your work, Steve-O. We know how difficult it is and how few and far between it is for those three-peat performances at the running back positions. I know Zeke's one of those guys this year, so it'll be interesting to see if he can go against the grain as far as that's concerned.
All right, who's up next?
Next up, up, we've got our guy Russ at Foresight FFPT at the 104 spot. Best available is Christian McCaffrey, CMC, Alvin Kamara, Devontae Adams, and Melvin Gordon.
Yeah, at this point, as much as the receivers look good, you still got to go with what I think is going to be the workhorse running back between Christian McCaffrey or Alvin Kamara. You got more injury concerns with like Melvin Gordon, David Johnson maybe, but I like Alvin Kamara at this spot for sure. Actually, it'd be very close, but I like Alvin Kamara a little bit more.
We'd expect nothing less from the PT to take into consideration injury concerns at the top of the draft.
I love it. Something we always talk about and something other people tend to ignore is that injury factor and that injury history with players. So, Russ, I love the pick.
Thanks.
Next up at the 105 spot, we've got Ghost Team 3, and best available is Christian McCaffrey.
And there goes CMC off the board. Again, it was a close call, and no surprise there.
All right. Next up at the 106 spot, we've got our guy Mike at Foresight Focus, and the best available at this point would be Devontae Adams, Melvin Gordon, Julio Jones, and David Johnson.
All right. I think I'm going to go with David Johnson here. It's a little bit of a stretch, but I think with Kyler Murray coming in and Kingsbury taking over as the head coach, they're going to actually use him to his potential this year. The safer bet probably would have been Devontae Adams, but nah.
Hey, you know what? The one thing I don't hear anybody talking about as much as I love Devontae Adams this year is he's got a little bit of history with injury himself. So, Mike, I tend to agree with you. I think there is definitely a very plausible reality where David Johnson gets himself back into the top 3 running backs this season.
I personally very strongly dislike that pick by Mike, only because of the fact that I was hoping David Johnson was going to fall to me at 10, so now I have no idea who I'm going to take in my spot.
Love it. And our guy at FF_encyclopedia is not going to be happy with the 107 spot. Ghost Team number 4 is sniping Devontae Adams right out from under him.
Oh, that's gotta hurt, the encyclopedia. Going right in front of him with the ghost pick.
And at the 108 spot, the best available for our guy Steve is running back Melvin Gordon, wide receiver Julio Jones, wide receiver Michael Thomas, tight end Travis Kelce, and wide receiver Odell Beckham Jr.
Yeah, I just want to say, not cool, Mike. I had DJ dialed up to be my pick right there, and that was a great reach, man. I think he has RB1 potential, like overall RB1 potential in fantasy this year if he's healthy and on the field all 16 games. And of course, DA, you guys know that's my guy. So as much as I don't like to have to just go straight up chalk, and I know Julio Jones, he's got the history of always being questionable and on the injury report, but he doesn't really miss games, and we did see him actually get in the end zone a lot more towards the tail end of last season. I have to go with Julio Jones right here. Again, thanks, Mike.
You're welcome.
A lot of love for Mike right now.
I gotta say, I'm really bummed Mike sniped David Johnson there in front of me. Now, I know Chalk would say I should roll with Melvin Gordon, but you guys talk a lot about the podcast injury concern, and Melvin Gordon, he's been in the league 4 years. He's only had one season where he's actually played a full 16-game slate. So he's a guy, at least for me, if I'm going to roll with somebody in the first round, I want to at least have the belief he's going to be there and be around for the full season. So I just can't roll with Melvin Gordon here. As much as I really wanted one of those bell cow running backs, for me, they're just all off the board at this point in time.
Steve, I got to say, I love everything you just said. There's also a lot of DJ love right now and a lot of dislike for Mike for disrupting all of our picks.
Hey, I do what I can. That's why you brought me along, right?
That's right, Mike.
We expect nothing less. Next up at the 109 spot, Ghost Team number 5 takes chalk running back Melvin Gordon.
Good luck to you. Enjoy it.
Yeah. We appreciate those picks. Thank you. We already said everything we needed to say about Mr. Gordo. He's got those injury concerns when he's on the field. He is RB1 on a high-flying offense, but we need you there when it matters the most. So next up at the 110 spot, we've got our co-host at Foresight J. And best 5 available, according to Chalk, is wide receiver Michael Thomas, tight end Travis Kelce, wide receiver OBJ, Odell Beckham Jr., running back Lev Bell, and running back James Conner.
Yeah, the trend is to go running back early. If we were in a tight end premium league, I'd be interested in taking Travis Kelce. But you know what? I would like to have an elite wide receiver, and I consider Michael Thomas to be exactly that. We discussed the probability of having back-to-back-to-back WR1 seasons, but if I'm going to bet on anybody, it's somebody like Michael Thomas, who's in the prime of his career, so I'm sticking with him.
Cannot blame you there, sir. And he was definitely one of the guys on my list that I was looking forward to at the turn here that will not be there, so thank you for that. And next up, we have got the 111 spot, Ghost Team number 6. The chalk pick there is tight end Travis Kelce, which greatly disappoints me as I am up next at the 12 and 13 spot and was definitely banking on him being there.
Well, sorry about your luck.
No, you're not, and I don't blame you. You shouldn't be. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. You get to take a Brown player next.
About that.
Oh, boy.
Oh, no. Is Ben going Steelers?
Zach, that's a very valid question. Fantasy football is about using your head and not your heart. I am at the 112 spot and then the 201 spot. So back-to-back at 12 and 13 overall.
Back-to-back Steelers?
I'm going to say this. One guy I think is way far down on this list, and another shout out to our guy, Steve, our Foresight Encyclopedia blog, gives a lot of love to the Oakland Raider, Antonio Brown.
So is that who you're going with?
That is who I am going with at the 112 spot.
No, don't do it. Let him slide.
Nope, can't do it. And he is off the wretched Steelers, so I am allowed to now, even by Zach's terms, right, buddy?
You are in the clear, and if I'm not mistaken, he's ended in a wide receiver 1 in 5 years in a row.
1 or 2 the last half decade. And as long as he's healthy and gets his normal 150, 60 plus targets, he's going to eat.
Exactly. I mean, and is he the type of guy that's going to allow that team to exist without him getting his 10 targets a game? No, he will yell at everybody he has to yell at until he gets the ball as much as he wants to get the ball.
I think he learned his lesson in Pittsburgh. He's not going to be a crybaby this year, and he's not going to get the ball.
Well, I hope you're wrong because I just picked him. We'll see if you're right about that or if I am. Now, next up for me at the 201 spot, I am sitting here struggling once again on yet another reach. I am struggling right now between Nick Chubb and Mike Evans. And just because looming Kareem Hunt coming back, and I know I have a lot of faith in Nick Chubb and just the volatility of that running back position, I think I am going to stack up on wide receivers early and go Antonio Brown and Mike Evans at the turn.
Yeah, I am glad that you did that because I was really hoping to take Nick Chubb with my next pick. So that was a wonderful selection by you.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Not. I don't want to help you. If I would have known that, I probably would have taken Chubb just to spite you. But Mike Evans is a beast. Bruce Arians is coming to town. Mike Evans, it seems like people are down on this guy for some reason. He still had 1,500 yards last year, and I think he's going to ball out. He could be top 3 wide receiver this season.
Oh, definitely, Ben. You're definitely not reaching there.
Thanks for the support, Russ. Next up with the chalk at the 202 spot, we've got Ghost Team 6 wrapping back around after they took tight end Travis Kelce. They're stacking that up with Cleveland Browns wide receiver OBJ.
Not a bad looking team so far.
No, man. Sometimes you just got to take what the draft gives you, and these ghost teams are going to be a perfect example of that before it's all said and done.
Yep.
So you are on the clock next, my friend. The 203 spot, who are you going to pair with Michael Thomas? Nick Chubb it is?
Nick Chubb it is. Yeah, I'm going to go down the board a little bit. I'm not going to go any of the next best 5. I'm going to go Nick Chubb. I got to grab a running back to pair with my wide receiver and Michael Thomas. I'd love to stack wide receivers like you did, but I got to grab a running back, an elite one, while I can.
I definitely understand that, and I can't argue with it. He was a stud as he burst onto the scene last season, and I expect nothing less going forward.
And right now, the running backs going in front of him are Lev Bell, James Conner, Joe Mixon, Todd Gurley, Dalvin Cook. A lot of guys with either injury issues, a history of injury issues, or with Lev Bell, a giant question mark coming into this season. So I'd rather go with what I know and what I know is Nick Chubb will be there all 16 games.
Well, Jay, with the Nick Chubb pick, I mean, I definitely think he's going to be a strong running back there, but I wouldn't put James Conner or Joe Mixon in as an injury risk. I know they've missed some time from a concussion, ankle sprains, but that's not something chronic and necessarily reproducible. It's just kind of bad luck. But you're definitely right with Todd Gurley. It's something that I wouldn't want to reach, or take too early, considering it can sink your fantasy season if you bank on him. He's not going to get the same amount of carries this year. That's getting pretty well established, and he might miss a few games there just because of that knee.
You know what, Russ? You raise a good point. And like you had mentioned, some of those guys do not have chronic injury issues, but the fact that they've missed time in the past is what makes me leery moving forward. So you're right. I mean, your point is valid.
Well, and Russ, speaking of missing time, the next up at the 204, Ghost Team number 5 is going to be taking Lev Bell. What do you think about the impact all of the missed time is going to have on his game this season?
That's a good question, Ben. I could see how you'd have concern, but there's just a good chance that he comes back after working out this whole offseason and he's got a big chip on his shoulder and he's hungry to show what he's worth and to stick it to the Steelers. So I could see him coming out on fire and just really tearing it up, especially with how much they're going to be feeding him the ball.
I think it's going to be an interesting situation overall. I mean, he's coming on to a new team. He's obviously going to be the workhorse. They're going to run him into the ground. He's got that heavy chip on his shoulder. It's been eaten all that time off, resting. So every time in the past, he's always started off slow. Every time he's taken some time off, it's taken him at least 3 weeks to get back into his groove. So, I mean, does he even get it back in New York, or does he continue to stumble? And it's just going to be fun to watch what happens.
Well, on top of that, Russ, what about the chance of like a pulled hammy? He hasn't been at game speed in over a full calendar year. How is that going to impact him from that perspective?
Well, that's another good concern and why he's dropped so far this year. And it will really be who of us to watch and see the preseason, see how much they're running him, see him in the practices leading up to it. And if they're holding him back a lot, if you're not seeing him play, there could be that they're concerned about soft tissue injury like that. But if he looks good in preseason, I say I wouldn't worry about it come first game of the regular season.
And one more notch in the pro category for Lev Bell is that he's always going to have that motivation to be running and sprinting away from scary Adam Gase's crazy eyes. So I think the injury price is baked in when it comes to Lev Bell, and he'll be a fun one to watch. So next up, that brings us back around to our guy Steve at FF_encyclopedia. First round, he took Julio Jones. Best available now is James Conner, Juju Smith-Schuster, Joe Mixon, Todd Gurley, Dalvin Cook, George Kittle, Zach Ertz. The list goes on. Who are you taking, Steve-O?
Well, fellas, I'm not a big fan of tight ends, so this one might come as a little bit of a shocker. But when I look at that list of running backs right there, I mean, there are a lot of injury concerns, just other red flags. I mean, really in Pittsburgh, I love James Conner, but I don't love Pittsburgh without Antonio Brown. Just a lot of things steer me the other way. And I didn't say I'm going to take George Kittle, though. I like Zach Ertz here at this spot. Going to go with the positional advantage of tight end. And I mean, not only is Ertz's 156 targets amazing, along with 113 receptions, because we're talking PPR here, but Ertz finished as a tight end 1, 2, or 3, 9 different occasions last year. So a vast majority of the fantasy football season, whereas George Kittle only did that 3 times. As much as it kind of makes me feel a little nauseous and also a little bit sloppy to take Zach Ertz there here in the second round. Can't believe I'm doing it, but what the heck?
You've sold me.
Well, it's not hard to sell you. I am surprised that Mr. Anti-Tight Ends over there is burning the 205 pick on Zach Ertz as much as I love the guy.
I feel a little nauseous, but let's just keep moving on here.
Hey, it helps me in this mock. I'm moving on strong, and so is everybody else after that pick. So next up at the 206 spot, we've got Ghost Team number 4. First time around, they picked Devontae Adams right out from under at Foresight Encyclopedia's nose. And now he is set to pair him up with running back James Conner, because that is the chalk pick, best available. I mean, James Conner gets a little bit of a bad rap because a lot of people forget the man was coming back from overcoming cancer and he fell off a little bit down the stretch. Now we make some ancillary good points when it comes to AB commanding defense offenses, and he's not going to be there anymore. But just from a James Conner perspective, I do think that he is going to be, in that RB1 conversation. And right now he is going as RB8. So that's a little higher than I would bank on him, but it's not an awful pick. Moving on. Next up at the 207 spot, we are back around to our guy Mike at Foresight Focus, who took running back David Johnson in the first round, and the best available that we have going right now for Mike is Juju Smith-Schuster, Joe Mixon, Todd Gurley, Dalvin Cook, or George Kittle.
The best of the worst. Unfortunately, none of these guys really are doing it for me.
And it's the second round.
Well, you would think at the second round you got guys that are, making you a little excited. And unfortunately, that's just not the case. I would just lots of concerns with Juju without Antonio Brown there commanding the number one corners. Still a young guy with a lot to prove. I like Dalvin Cook, but not that much because he's kind of a sissy. Don't tell him I said that.
Haven't made a decision yet?
Well, no, because honestly, I don't like my position. I don't like any of these guys that much, so I just keep going down the list. I really wanted a wide receiver here, and there's not much that's doing it for me, but I think I'm going to go with T.Y. Hilton right here because I think Andrew Luck proved that he's back last year and he's only going to get better, and the number one receiver for a guy that passes 700 times a game is a guy that I want on my team. So T.Y. Hilton.
Yeah, I mean, he was wide receiver 13 in PPR points per game this season, wide receiver 15 in targets, wide receiver 16 in receptions, wide receiver 10 in receiving yards. I mean, yeah, wide receiver 4, minimum 50 receptions with 16.7 yards per reception. Yeah, nice sneaky little pick there.
Yeah, I like his potential, especially with that last year building up his rapport with Andrew Luck, and hopefully Eric Ebron doesn't steal so many touchdowns this year.
Eloquently put, as only our guy Mike could do it. Next up, we have got the Ghost Team 3 back around at the 208 spot. First round, they upset us all when they got Christian McCaffrey, and they are going to be taking Juju Smith-Schuster. Let this guy take on all the risk. Thank you.
Yeah, but that could be a home run of a team with CMC and Juju if Juju's able to step into those shoes and fill them.
I think we all agree he's going to be a target monster at the very least.
Could be a scary team for Ghost Team number 3.
Next up at the 209 spot, we are back around to our guy Russ at Foresight FFPT. His best available still seems like the same usual suspects that have been there for the last couple. You got Joe Mixon, Todd Gurley, Dalvin Cook, George Kittle, and Keenan Allen. Who are you going with, Russ?
All these guys are actually pretty tempting for me, but I would say that, gosh, and you got to worry about with the tight end landscape. If you don't hit on the top 3, then you're really starting to potentially scramble. So I think I'm going to go ahead and go with George Kittle here.
Wow, I was really expecting you to go Joe Mixon there, buddy.
That was a very close call, actually. I like Joe Mixon a lot.
Steve, your tight end blog and our historical ADP podcast is having the opposite effect. There's a run on tight ends. What is happening?
Look what you've done, Steve.
I think the offense still runs through Kittle almost. I mean, Dante Pettis will be good, but Kittle was a beast, and he showed it with whoever quarterback he had there. And even though he will, obviously regress from his record-breaking yards, I think there's more, potentially more touchdowns there for him, and it'll take some of the heat off of him. Everybody was gunning on him. If you were watching during the season, he had like 2 people guarding him. How often do you get 2 people guarding a tight end? Only with the top guys in the league. So he won't have that, and he'll beat any linebacker one-on-one. So I'm fine with it.
Love it, Russ.
Russ coming strong. Impressive, buddy. I like it. My only concern about Kittle is that he was tight end 3 in targets last season with 136. I'm worried that there's going to be a couple more mouths to feed in that passing game this season, so the target share could dip a little bit. And then anytime you have a record-setting season, you got to expect some natural regression from there. So those are my only concerns. Beyond that, I love every other point you made, and it's not a bad pick at all. I can totally understand it.
Yeah, I agree, Ben. And just the drop-off between 3 and 4 or 5 is going to be huge.
Jay, you got anything else to add?
No, I'm just eager to see Ghost Team 2, who they're going to pair up with Zeke.
Man, this could be pretty formidable this season. You've got a new offensive coordinator coming to town, bringing the supposed high-flying Rams offense to what was previously previously one of the most putrid fantasy producers in the NFL last season. You've got chalk taken at the 210 spot, Cincinnati Bengals running back Joe Mixon.
Yeah, Joe was a guy who we were up and down on last year. I think he proved us wrong a number of times, and he did battle some injuries here and there and missed a little bit of time, but overall was a rock-solid RB1 when he was in the game.
Yeah, and he missed a couple of games, like you said. He only missed 2 games and was still RB10 overall, and he was on a very inefficient Bengals offense, was about as bad as it could be. And so I remember talking with you on our review pod that there just becomes a certain point in the draft where it starts to behoove you to take some of these guys that, while they will miss a little bit of time, when they do play, as far as a points per game level go, they're going to be pretty elite.
Yep, and pairing him with Zeke is a pretty formidable backfield for Ghost Team 2.
Yeah, I'm not liking that 1-2 punch they have at the running back position. Anything else to add on Joe Mixon, guys? All right. We will move it back around. It seems like it's been forever since we talked to you, Zach, at Foresight Family, man. First round went with DeAndre Hopkins. Who are you going with at the 211 spot? Your best available, according to Chalk, is running back Todd Gurley, Dalvin Cook, Keenan Allen, AJ Green, or Amari Cooper.
Well, I think there's a little bit of concern with Gurley, but at this point in the draft, at the end of the second round, I feel pretty comfortable going with him so that I can get a running back, plus knowing I have another pick to get a wide receiver here in a couple minutes.
We are not going to peek behind the curtain as far as our league of record goes too much on this podcast, but Zach, I am shocked to hear the guy that got burnt by Shady McCoy in essentially the exact same spot last season going with a risky type of running back at the 211 spot. Mr. Gurley could be an amazing RB1, just like he's been historically, even with a slightly reduced workload. But at the same time, man, off of just getting burnt last season, Zach is exemplifying not playing with your emotions and going with his head, man. Gutsy call there.
Well, if you look at the remaining running backs here in the next couple of picks, there aren't a lot left before it would come around to me again. And I wanted to keep Gurley away from our Ghost Team 1, who already has Barkley. So
that's a nice
playing a little defense
strategy. Absolutely. And speaking of Ghost Team 1, now that you took Todd Gurley from him at the 212 spot, he had to go with Dalvin Cook, running back from Minnesota, which I think we all agree on this podcast is a little overhyped for the very small sample size that we've seen of this guy over the last couple seasons.
Well, that just neutralized the pick of Saquon Barkley for Ghost Team 1, so I am happy with that.
Totally agree. I cannot understand why people are so high on this guy this season. I mean, he has that potential upside, but to pay for his absolute ceiling price when you've never seen it before over more than a 4-game stretch, I'm sorry. It's too rich for me.
And it is going to be interesting to see how it goes with Gurley moving forward, because typically when there's this much smoke, there is fire. So it's either going to be that or everybody's just flat wrong. So one way or the other, it's pretty two extremes and polarizing with Todd. But getting back on track, it's going to be interesting to see who Ghost Team 1 pairs now with Saquon and with Dalvin Cook.
Yes, coming back around to the 301 spot, I am very disappointed, hoping that somehow he was going to fall all the way to the end of this round to me. But the chalk says that Ghost Team 1 needed to take wide receiver Keenan Allen from the LA Chargers, which I think is an excellent pick, especially for a team that is void of a wide receiver so far.
Yeah, definitely. Good pick for him. He lucked out, or he or she, they lucked out with that selection, pairing him with 2 running backs. And with a team that now is down Tyrell Williams, who we loved on this podcast, good pick. How can you argue against Keenan Allen?
No, I think he's a rock-solid back-end wide receiver 1 this season with upside for sure. All right, moving on. That brings us back to at Foresight Family Man, Zach, at the 302 spot. Who are you going to pair up with DeAndre Hopkins and Todd Gurley? According to the chalk, your best available is wide receiver AJ Green, Amari Cooper, running back Leonard Fournette, Adam Thielen, Stephon Diggs, or Damian Williams.
Please make it Fournette.
It will not be Fournette. I am going to go with Amari Cooper out of this group. I don't have any great reasons.
Any particular reason that you are passing on AJ Green? Just curious, not saying that I disagree with the decision.
Injuries. Going back to our League of Record comment, I got burned by AJ Green last year, and I don't anticipate things getting a whole lot better in Bengals world this year.
All right. Well, I got to be honest. There might be a little Browns homerism there. I think that offense was exceptionally bad last season, and they definitely are going to be a little bit improved on that. And the difference between being like 32nd and like 20th is pretty different. But to your point, it's all going to come down to AJ Green's health. I don't know, Russ, if you're up to speed on his medical conditions or concerns, but do you have any comments about AJ Green coming off an injury?
Well, the reason he's so far down this list here is because of that. And yeah, you take him and you have a very good chance that he finishes much higher. His upside could easily be 5, but he's missed games the last couple of seasons, or at least 2 out of the last 3 seasons. I don't think that any of the injuries this year would necessarily say that it's going to reoccur or that it's going to hinder him, considering it was early on. He has had a ton of rehab, but it always is a concern when you see a guy that consistently can't get through 16 games.
Can't argue with you there, Russ, and he is definitely not getting any younger. And that is exactly who Ghost Team number 2 is taking at the 303 spot. So now they have Zeke, Joe Mixon, and AJ Green.
That must be our friend SCH's team there, the Cincinnati Bengals lover. Yeah, pairing up a couple of Bengals there. You know, if that offense is resurgent like you said they could be, you know, that could be a sneaky good team. AJ Green is a guy who at least we kind of gave, you know, an injury bug kind of rap to, even though it wasn't necessarily merited going into last season, but last season we saw that come to fruition once again. So it's all dependent on his health and that offense now for Ghost Team 2.
Totally agree with you. Next up, we've got our guy Russ back around at Foresight FFPT at the 304 spot. He has got Alvin Kamara and George Kittle, and to pair with them, his best available options according to the chalk is running back Leonard Fournette, Adam Thielen, Stephon Diggs, Damian Williams, Patrick Mahomes, and Julian Edelman.
Yeah, after saying that about AJ Green, it would have been a really close call between, for me here, him and Adam Thielen. But the one thing we know about Adam Thielen is that he plays every game, and he had the really hot start last year. I think it was 6 games in a row with 100 yards, and he definitely trailed off at the end there. But that's also because they changed their offense to a more of a running game. And with Dalvin Cook, we're not going to necessarily think that they're going to be that running team that they were towards the end of the season, and they're going to get back into throwing the ball a nice, even amount of the time. So I'm happy to take Adam Thielen here.
Just like Mike's pick in the first round, stealing David Johnson right before me, I really dislike this pick from Russ because Adam Thielen is a guy I love. That offense is going to have more continuity going into this season with 2 years under their belt now together. So, great pick, Russ. I just was really hoping, even though it was improbable, that Adam Thielen was going to fall.
I've got to agree with Jay. I love this pick out of you. He was wide receiver 7 in fantasy points per game in 2018, wide receiver 6 in targets, tied for wide receiver 3 in receptions, wide receiver 8 in receiving yards, and tied for wide receiver 8 in touchdowns. You spoke to his extreme durability. I'm with you. I think Adam Thielen is the wide receiver to roster on that team, and I think he's a rock solid wide receiver 1 that you just stole in the 3rd round.
I know we can't live in the past, but you just listed a lot of important stats that are all top 8 at the position, and he is currently going WR 13. If that's not value, I don't know what is.
Well, Jay, don't worry. You still have Leonard Fournette.
Nope, he's going next.
All right, you're absolutely right. So next up, we've got at the 305 spot for Ghost Team 3, we are adding running back Leonard Fournette to his already strong backfield with Christian McCaffrey, and then he added wide receiver Juju Smith-Schuster in the 2nd round. Leonard Fournette, I got to be honest, is somebody that I think is a pretty decent value this season. In last year, if I remember correctly, he was going more towards the end of the 1st, a high 2nd. Now that he's going middle of the 3rd at the 305 spot, somewhere around there, I don't mind taking Leonard Fournette at all. I mean, he's shown
he can do it.
I mean, the price is better, sure, and the value is better, but boy, there's still some risk there, don't you think?
There's definitely a lot of risk there, but there's also not a lot of running backs left that is going to get the guaranteed workload that he's going to get.
There's one coming up that will.
Like you said, every time he's on the field, he still produces as like an RB1. It just if he's on the field.
Yeah, well, and there are new reports about him being a lot more involved in the passing game this season, so you should get a little bit more PPR upside with him. So again, I definitely understand, Jay, your aversion to risk and why you would not personally take him here. If other people do in certain situations, I get it. I do not think Ghost Team 3 is in that category, though, for the record, because there's so many stud rock solid wide receivers available, because he already has the stud rock solid Christian McCaffrey, and because he already has the question mark Juju Smith-Schuster at the wide receiver position.
I'm eager to see who Foresight Focus is going to steal out from under me again.
He's up next at the 306 spot. He already has David Johnson and T.Y. Hilton, and the best 5 available for him, according to Chalk currently, is Stephon Diggs, running back Damian Williams, Patrick Mahomes, Julian Edelman, or the LA Rams wide receivers Robert Woods and Brandon Cooks.
I mean, I'm pretty partial to rolling with Mahomes.
Oh, snap. Oh.
But I can't pull the trigger here. So right now, I kind of like Damian Williams' situation. He came out strong at the end of the year, slid in the Kareem Hunt's role, and played it well.
Andy Reid's offenses do tend to produce pretty significant fantasy football running backs.
I know. I think I got some decent wide receivers that I wouldn't mind pairing with T.Y. So I'm going to go with Williams on this one.
Glad I talked you into that.
Interesting.
You didn't talk me into it. I've actually been eyeing him, but that's one thing I hate about this is you guys are going to be privy to my madness.
I love it. See, this is some of the method to our madness. We get to even the playing field a little bit.
Oh, mm-hmm.
We have a special fake podcast just for you guys this season.
I'll give you a fake podcast.
All right. So next up at the 307 spot, we've got Ghost Team 4, who already has Devontae Adams, running back James Conner, and now with the next Chalk selection, they will add wide receiver Stephon Diggs from the Vikings.
Yeah, it's a good pick. I like it.
It's a strong team.
Yeah, we cannot let a ghost team be the best team, guys.
No, that would not be good. So, yes, Ghost Team 4 has a pretty decent team. A little bit of a question mark there with James Conner, but if James Conner can be that back-end RB1, that Ghost Team 4 is looking pretty solid. So that brings us back around to our guy, Steve, at FF_encyclopedia, who started off with Julio Jones and Zach Ertz, and now the chalk best available for him. I know our guy is not going with quarterback Patrick Mahomes, and then he's got Julian Edelman, Robert Woods, Brandon Cook, Marlon Mack, Kenny G, Aaron Jones, and Devontae Freeman. I am really interested to hear who you're going with at this point in the draft, Steve-O.
Yeah, I did not envision a world where I would actually be sitting here in round 3 and still devoid of my RB1 on my roster. So this is like a nightmare for me. What's also a nightmare is when I look at the running backs available in this round, the guys I do like Aaron Jones. I do like Marlon Mack. But both guys, they have some question marks. They've had injuries. They both are attached to what we think are going to be great offenses. So it's almost like, well, pick your flavor of the month, flavor of the week, whatever you want to call it. For me, though, I know that if I go based on the ECR, it should be Marlon Mack, and I get a lot of that appeal. But my goodness, guys, if Aaron Jones wasn't a monster, and Mike, you know this because you had him in our league of record last year down the stretch. Aaron Jones, once he assumed that starting role, he was an absolute beast. So it's a little bit of a roll of the dice, but I do think that Matt LaFleur, they're going to utilize Aaron Jones the right way. He's going to get the touches. He will be the guy that gets a lion's share of that backfield next season. And he has like RB5 or higher potential. So a roll of the dice, I have to at this point. I don't have a running back. So there it is. I got to go with a running back right here, Aaron Jones.
I think that's a fantastic pick. I was actually eyeing him over Damian Williams, but it was just something about the offense there.
Steve, I think that's a really good pick. Last year, he was tied for RB 34 with 133 attempts, yet he was RB 17 in fantasy points per game and RB 24 overall. So yeah, and he was RB 12 with 5.5 yards per carry and tied for RB 11 with 8 touchdowns. I mean, the sky's the limit for this guy, knowing that he is the running back. If he can stay, if you could guarantee me 16 games of Aaron Jones this season, he might be a top running back.
Absolutely. Moving on to Ghost Team 5, Ben. It's going to happen.
Yeah, we'll see at the 309 spot. Ghost Team 5 already has running back Melvin Gordon and Lev Bell. So, according to the chalk,
yeah,
we got our first quarterback, ladies and gentlemen. It's Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, I don't love that team.
No, I don't either at all. Not even a little bit. The best pick probably on that team right now is Lev Bell, and that's a scary one.
Yeah. That's an ugly team in my opinion. What do you guys think?
Pretty ugly.
Yeah, I thought mine was looking pretty gross, but not as bad as that.
Solid analysis from Team Foresight. Next up, we have at the 310 spot. Back around to you.
Let me just stop you right here. I'm going Brandon Cooks. You don't even have to read off the list. I'm taking my boy Cooksy because he's an Iron Man. I know he's going to be on the field, and he is a top-end wide receiver. So you don't even have to read off the rest of the guys on the list.
Yeah, Jay likes some Brandon Cooks, and I can't blame him. Brandon Cooks is like he said, he's an Iron Man every single year. He is a top-end wide receiver, too, with that back-end wide receiver one upside in that offense. And I feel like people are finally starting to come around on him. He was getting a little bit more overlooked last season, coming off of that slightly disappointing season in New England that everybody overreacted to. So now I think he's very appropriately priced, and I think you made an excellent pick.
Yeah, I mean, I would have considered him over Adam Thielen, but considering it was his first year in that offense, so he's going to be more in tune with Goff this year.
Oh, but you can't go wrong with Thielen, so, you can't blame yourself on that. I mean, Thielen's a rock-solid WR1 all day. Unfortunately, though, this leaves a pretty coveted wide receiver to Ghost Team 6, though.
Yes, next up at the 311 spot, Ghost Team 6 gets our guy, wide receiver Julian Edelman, to pair with tight end Travis Kelce and wide receiver Odell Beckham Jr. There is a nice combination of upside, stability, and positional advantage on this team. Ghost Team 6 is looking pretty nice.
I'll tell you what, if we are playing in a league with Ghost Team 6, they are leading our league in targets, and that worries me.
They don't have any top-end running backs, though.
That is true. You're right about that. They're going 0 RB, that's for sure, but boy, that is just 3 guys that are going to be target monsters all season long.
Yeah, like we said, we can't let a ghost team be the one that gets voted on over here, guys. So it'll be interesting. At the end of all this, ladies and gentlemen, we will be posting all the rosters, ghost teams and our teams, in a little poll tournament to see who you guys choose as the most formidable start to this year's 12-team PPR mock. So we all hope it's not a ghost team. So after Ghost Team 6, we finally got back around to me, and man, I've got 2 picks here back-to-back at the turn, the 312 and the 401 spot. My chalk best available options are Robert Woods, Marlon Mack, Kenny Galladay, Devontae Freeman, Cooper Kupp, Chris Godwin, and Alshon Jeffrey. So at this point right now, I am going to continue to not panic. I'm going to continue to take what the draft gives me, and I am going to go best available on my board. And right now, I'm trying to decide between Robert Woods and Kenny Galladay, Kenny G. Now, I really like both guys this season, and a lot of people expect Kenny G to take a step this year, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if that happened. But A, I haven't seen it yet. And B, people sleep a little bit on Marvin Jones. And I think that's more of a 1A, 1B situation than people want to make it out to be. And so long story short, I am going to start off with wide receiver Robert Woods to add to my stud wide receiver core, AB and Mike Evans. And Robert Woods last year, he was wide receiver 13 in targets, tied for wide receiver 11 in receptions, wide receiver 11 with 1,200 receiving yards, and he was tied for wide receiver 20 with 6 touchdowns. I think all of those numbers are sustainable, and I think his touchdowns could be in line to go up a little bit this season.
As long as he stays healthy, he's a heck of a receiver, so who can argue with that one?
And I believe we had that same concern with him last season, and he put together an entirely healthy year.
He did.
So that does not concern me at all. And that now gives me 3 straight wide receivers. I definitely need a running back.
Take us into the 4th and final round, Ben.
Yep, 3 straight wide receivers. Definitely need a running back. At the 401 spot, I know there's a little bit of injury concern, but I am definitely going to go with best available, take what the draft gives me, going with my guy, Indianapolis Colts running back Marlon Mack. He is the guy going into this season. I'm also high on Nyheim Hines, so if I take Marlon Mack, I'm definitely going to look to pair him with Hines later on. He's got that standalone PPR value with a definite uptick if Marlon Mack misses some time, but on a points per game basis, Marlon Mack is a beast, and he is a very nice value at the top of the 4th round for me in need of a running back position.
No arguments here. Love the pick.
So, all right. Well, thanks, Jay. Next up for Ghost Team 6, it is their pick yet again. We don't like how this team has started, and I got to be honest, I don't like the next pick either. It's Kenny Galladay. I was going back and forth between he and Robert Woods, and now he falls to Ghost Team 6, who already has Odell Beckham Jr., Julian Edelman, and Travis Kelce.
Yeah, but the weakness is going to be sniping some rookie running backs and hoping they can produce later in the draft. I mean, I love the wide receiver core, obviously, but now you're going to start getting desperate for running backs.
They are definitely going to have to go full-fledged zero running back theory, but with that positional advantage at the tight end, that could soften that blow a little bit.
You know what, Ben? I am eager to get to my next pick. Can we do that?
No, we can't. Yeah, we can. 403 overall. It is your pick, Jay. Who are you going to pair up with? Michael Thomas, Nick Chubb, and Brandon Cooks?
I'm going to take my guy.
Speak.
No, are you taking DH?
I am going to take Derrick Henry.
That's awesome.
2019 NFL MVP rushing leader, Derrick Henry. He's going to be the cornerstone of my team. 280 carries at least. Let's do this.
Foresight, Ben thinks that's a great value pick.
Well,
you know what?
It is a good... Listen, I've never been a DH guy, and I do have to give some credence to Ben's arguments that he has made. We have had some internal debates. We've had some public debates on Twitter, if you are listening and have followed any of that. And there is some credence to the fact that when he has received the volume, he has produced. So I've got to give him that. He's never been as efficient as I'd like for him to be. But you know what? If he's going to be a focal point in that offense, I'll take a risk on him. I'd like another running back who's guaranteed some volume. So I'll go DH. Why not?
Hey, guys, I have to chime in here really quick. So, I completely agree and understand. Like, we're talking about a 4th round pick, and when you look at the running back landscape, totally makes sense. And I get it. I'm just more in the camp of we will probably see more of Derrick Henry be that up and down running back, especially in PPR. We're very limited on his PPR upside. And depending on game script, will he end up as an RB2 this year? If he's healthy and plays all 16 games, I say absolutely. Locked and loaded, RB2 at the minimum. It's just, do you want to go on that ride to get there? Now, where you're taking him, Jay, I can't fault that. I'm more in the RB3 conversation when it comes to him. But yeah, you guys know how I feel about Derrick Henry. And I'm gonna have a whole article posted up on fancyforesight.com here pretty soon, all about Derrick Henry.
Now I have Chubb and Henry, so I'm happy.
At this point in the draft, for a guy who ended the season like Derrick Henry did, I don't think it's. I think you can make a lot worse picks than going with Derrick Henry at this point. So, okay, then moving on, Ghost Team 5 will take the best available chalk, and thank God for all of us, it is Devontae Freeman. I think I speak for the Foresight consensus when I say we do not want any part of that injury risk this offseason, but that 4th round price tag is getting pretty reasonable for him as well, and he's a guy that's done it before.
It is, but look at Ghost Team 5. What a risky roster that is.
That is very true. Melvin Gordon, Lev Bell, Pat Mahomes, and Devontae Freeman is a pretty volatile roster heading into this season.
Yikes.
Oh, P-Town.
I was going to say, Ghost Team 5, they could go undefeated or not win a game.
Yeah, no kidding.
All right. So after Devontae Freeman, we've got next up Steve at the 408 spot at FF_encyclopedia already has Julio Jones, Zach Ertz, Aaron Jones, and in the fourth round, the chalk best available for him is wide receiver Cooper Kupp, highly touted Chris Godwin, Alshon Jeffrey, Tyler Lockett, Andrew Luck, and Kerryon Johnson.
I think for those of you that know me pretty well, know where I might be leaning at this point in time. I feel like so far in this draft, I've got my RB1, I've got my WR1, I've got my tight end one. And although I would advise against taking a quarterback early, I do believe this season, Aaron Rodgers, only 25 touchdowns last year. If he is healthy and plays all 16 games, we will see him more in that upper 30s, low 40s range. And I'll say this, a lot of it is, Ben, you just named off all those guys. Tell me how, sexy are those names? How tremendous is the upside with any of those guys? So for me, I'm like, hey, if I get a guy that traditionally, if he's healthy, is like a QB1, QB2 in fantasy, I'm just going to go ahead and say, hey, I'm locked and loaded at quarterback. I will go ahead and take. I see your face there, Ben. You know what I'm going to do in our league of record.
I'll bet Captain Luck or Deshaun Watson can chug a beer like a man.
Oh!
Well, that would be the only thing they do better than Aaron Rodgers. So I'm going to take Aaron Rodgers right here. And, I got to go with my man, A-Rod. It is what
So let me get this straight. The guy who writes about don't take a tight end, the guy who writes about don't take Aaron Rodgers has taken a tight end in the second round, a quarterback in the fourth round. And also he's about to write about how you should not draft Derrick Henry. So to me, that says that he's going to take him high and that Derrick Henry is going to ball out this season.
Hey, good. I like my pick even more now.
Always exceptions to the rules, guys.
That value, Aaron Rodgers is a good pick.
Oh, no doubt.
Thanks,
I mean, Aaron Rodgers is a beast. It was a very insanely unusual year last year. I think in any real draft that any of us are faced with, Aaron Rodgers is available in the fourth. At least half the time, we're all coming away with that guy. That's just a ridiculous value.
No Mike McCarthy to blame poor performance on this season.
Yeah, and guys, I'm not taking Sammy Watkins over Aaron Rodgers. That just is what it is. My back's in a corner. I have to do what I have to do.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that, and it's just funny with all the blogging and all the everything. But you're right, exceptions to the rule. It's all in good fun here. And next up, at the 406 spot, Ghost Team 4 is going to be adding to their already formidable Devontae Adams, James Conner, Stephon Diggs team, rock solid wide receiver Cooper Kupp, albeit is coming off of that ACL injury.
Yeah, the guy who everybody attributes the reason why the Rams didn't win the Super Bowl is because Cooper Kupp was not in that offense, and they didn't look quite the same ever since he left. Now it's going to be interesting to see how he bounces back from a season-ending injury and if he can come back and be the same player.
Anybody else got anything about Coop?
Yeah, I would say that at this point, ACLs don't necessarily matter as much as they used to, of course. And so he should be 100%. He might be slow to start, but, don't sleep on him and be more worried about the Achilles injuries because those are the ones that aren't going to be coming back.
Good call, Russ. Next up at the 407 spot, we are back around to our guy Mike at Foresight Focus. He already has David Johnson, T.Y. Hilton, and in my opinion, took a little bit of a risk going with Damian Williams. And in the fourth round, his chalk best available picks are wide receiver Chris Godwin, Alshon Jeffrey, Tyler Lockett, Andrew Luck, Kerryon, or Deshaun Watson.
I just want to point out when Steven said that Aaron Rodgers could beat Deshaun Watson and Andrew Luck in anything, he could not beat Deshaun Watson in a race. And that bothers me.
Very astute comment there, Mike.
My pick is going to be Tyler Lockett, who would win the race out of all of them.
Race to the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Aaron Rodgers will win that. And
Well, that's not a real race. I mean, I could just buy a gold jacket right now.
That's pure gold, Michael. It's just top-notch work out of you.
Well, I didn't want Zach to get Tyler Lockett again for like the 9th year in a row.
Yeah, you know what? That's true.
Yep.
That is hilarious. Well, Zach, I don't think you've ever had to take him in the 4th round before. That's for sure.
No, but he does not drop passes. He's a catch machine.
No, I mean, how many years? It hasn't been like multiple seasons since the man's dropped the pass. Like, it's something stupid, isn't it?
All of last year.
Yeah, that's absolutely ridiculous. He did what he did off of not a ton of targets. And even though there's not a ton of targets to go around this year, we don't know how durable and reliable DK Metcalf's going to be. Then all you have besides that, really, from a pass catching standpoint, is David Moore, who is the cheapest out of all of them and kind of who I really like later on in drafts. But I mean, I can't really argue with Tyler Lockett. He was an absolute stud last year in PPR, and I don't expect much different from him this year.
First of all, false. We do know how durable DK Metcalf is going to be, or should I say how not durable DK Metcalf is going to be. But you're right. Tyler Lockett is an absolute fantasy machine. He's quietly a producer year in and year out, and going in the 4th round, that's a value right there.
Yeah, can't argue with that at all. And that brings us back around to Ghost Team 3. Out of the 408 spot, the chalk pick is solid. Tampa Bay wide receiver Chris Godwin, and they are paired up with Juju Smith-Schuster, Leonard Fournette, and Christian McCaffrey. If the ball bounces the right way for this team, this could be another tough one.
Yeah, but that's a big if. You know, there's some question marks there. And Chris Godwin certainly is a talented receiver, but we'll see what happens with that.
Yes, we will. And then that brings us back to our guy Russ for his last pick in this mock episode. At Foresight FFPT started off with Alvin Kamara. Then he took George Kittle in the 2nd, Adam Thielen in the 3rd. And now at the 409 spot, his best available options are quarterback Andrew Luck, Kerryon Johnson, Deshaun Watson, Sammy Watkins, DJ Moore, and Phillip Lindsay.
Was Alshon Jeffrey also in there or no?
Yeah.
Yes, he is.
But that's okay. I don't want him. I will take, at this point, I need another running back. I took one in the 1st round, and I definitely think that the running backs after Kerryon and Phillip Lindsay drop off drastically. So, and I don't want to take a quarterback this early since I don't have to. I'm going to go with Kerryon Johnson. I think that offense is going to be much better this year. Stafford's going to be a lot better. I think people are going to be sleeping on this team, and Kerryon's going to have the workload, and he's going to produce.
Yeah, word on the street is Theo Riddick on the trade block are going to be moved or released anytime.
I was just going to say, gentlemen, Theo Riddick accounted for 74 targets last year. And if Theo Riddick vacates this backfield, all of a sudden you have Kerryon Johnson, who was tied for RB13 last season with 5.4 yards per carry, who is now in line for 50-plus targets. I mean, 74 is what went to Theo Riddick. I mean, wow. You know, he was RB 18 in fantasy points per game last season, and he was only targeted 39 times.
And he did not even get any part of the workload at the beginning because they wanted to keep giving the ball to Blunt.
All right, Russ, I think you can tell that I really like that pick.
Yeah, but watch his ADP skyrocket the second Riddick is jettisoned from that backfield.
And quite frankly, it should, Jay. I mean, right now, his consensus ECR is RB19. I mean, if Riddick all of a sudden is gone, that could shoot up to near top 10, which that's an entirely different conversation. It's a little bit riskier, but man, 74 targets is 74 targets. Yep. All right, moving on to Ghost Team 2, the formidable Ghost Team 2 with Ezekiel Elliott, Joe Mixon, AJ Green at the 410 spot. Their chalk pick will be Philadelphia Eagles wide receiver Alshon Jeffrey.
You know, I like Alshon, but that team looks a lot less formidable to me now after the last 2 picks.
I mean, Alshon gutted out some tough injuries last year. There is a big difference to me when a guy misses time versus when a guy guts through an injury and still performs in a manner in which you didn't really know he was gutting through an injury. If all of a sudden he's not dealing with a serious shoulder injury all season, I think his last year's season numbers could definitely be best.
Well, and you're right about that, because you take a guy like Stephon Diggs, who's going much earlier in drafts, and he is a completely different player playing through injury. It's very noticeable, and there's a big drop-off when he's dinged up versus when he is fully healthy. And a guy like Alshon, you don't know until the season's over that he was ever battling through anything.
That is an outstanding point, and that's why I definitely don't mind that pick at all. I think he is a very non-sexy, solid wide receiver too on the back end this season.
All right, our final human pick.
Yeah, at the 411 spot, our guy Zack at Foresight Family Man started off with DeAndre Hopkins, then added Todd Gurley and Amari Cooper. His best available options at this point, according to Chalk, Andrew Luck, Deshaun Watson, Sammy Watkins, DJ Moore, and Phillip Lindsay.
Please take Sammy Watkins.
I am not taking Sammy Watkins. I can't believe anybody's taking Sammy Watkins. I am going to go further down the list, and this is a stretch probably here, but because we only have 4 rounds, I'm grabbing him. Jay's favorite, James White, New England Patriots.
That's fine. I'll take James White too. I thought you were going to say Jarvis Landry. I'd take both of them. Let's do this. PPR studs.
A lot of people are down on James White. Sony Michel's knee is I mean, he's the only fixture running back in that backfield over the last few seasons. I mean, he's a target machine. He's a very sneaky good goal line running back too, which in that offense is extremely valuable. And even though he is in a timeshare, he gets the most valuable piece of that timeshare in PPR leagues.
Don't you feel like we're already reliving 2018 as far as the New England backfield goes? Sony Michel has already had his knee drained. I feel like we're doing this all over again. Everyone's going to sleep on James White. He's going to be the only healthy back. And you know what he's going to do when he gets the ball? He's going to produce every single time. But the frustrating thing is, New England will always look to give the ball to somebody else whenever anybody else is healthy, which is why New England running backs are frustrating to own.
Can't argue with any of that. And last up at the 412 spot, our Ghost Team 1 adds to Saquon Barkley, Dalvin Cook, Keenan Allen, goes quarterback Andrew Luck.
Ouch. Man.
So we got 6 ghost teams, 6 real teams. I'm only really concerned about a couple of the ghost teams. I do believe that the majority of the top to bottom roster quality lies in the actual team Foresight picks in this particular mock. But of course, mine are the best.
Well, thanks for joining us, everybody. That was a lot of fun.
I hope everybody out there had as much fun as I did, man. This is the most fun I've had on a pod in quite some time, and they're usually pretty fun anyways.
Congrats, Ben, on winning the mock draft.
We shall see.
Thanks, Mike.
We should have a little side bet.
I feel like there needs to be some compensation.
Side bet.
We need to make a side bet.
If we're going to post these mock drafts, I want to change my Derrick Henry pick then.
No.
I don't
No
like
way.
where I was drafting out of.
Let's redo it.
Tomorrow night. Rematch.
Wow, everybody. I hope you all enjoyed that as much as I did. It was an absolute blast bringing the Foresight family on for the first time for their pod debut. Get a chance to see the personalities that we get to deal with behind the scenes on a day-to-day, year-to-year basis, and just get a little bit of more of an idea of how we interact here at Fantasy Foresight. It was a lot of fun, and now I know Jay's got a couple of super exciting announcements.
Yeah, you know, the first time we got the family together was a blast, and I get to announce another first for the Foresight family, and that is our first Expo experience. FantasyForesight.com, the team from Fantasy Foresight will be at the Midwest Fantasy Football Expo in Canton, Ohio on August 18th. So if you're in the area, come out, see us. We will be there, interact with all the guys to answer all your fantasy football questions, interact with you guys. So come on out. We'll be sending out a promo code for discounted tickets here. So check that out on Twitter. And to spice things up, just a little bit more, last week we announced the Fantasy Foresight Challenge, where we will have 6 listeners, 6 guests take on the Fantasy Foresight team in a $1,000 prize winner-takes-all competition, and we will be giving away one of those spots at the expo. So stop by the booth and we will get your name in the running.
Man, it's going to be so exciting, Jay. And just like you heard, ladies and gentlemen, these 6 guys that were just on here mocking, me, Jay, and the other 4, this is who you would be playing against. And we were having a lot of fun tonight. It's a mock draft and all that. But when it comes down to the real competition, we take this very seriously, to the point that we think if you can come in here to our league, to Fantasy Foresight's house at fantasyforesight.com, and you can take out all 6 of us, then we will give you $1,000. We don't think you can do it.
Boom.
And that's not all. Total Foresight is almost complete. We are in the final stages and we are so close. We are almost ready to roll out the live 2019 crown jewel of fantasyforesight.com that our preview podcast episodes are centered around. That is an all-encompassing 1 to 100 metric that tells you who has the best chances of scoring the most points in a given week and a given season. Total Foresight. You got to check it out at fantasyforesight.com. And the next time you hear us back on this podcast, we will be covering, for the first time in 2019, a preview podcast for the quarterbacks and running backs of the AFC East. As the legendary Jets Bart Scott says, can't wait.
And that wraps up this episode of Fantasy Foresight, the podcast. We thank you for joining us. Be sure to visit us, as always, at fantasyforesight.com. Use the links at the bottom of the page to find us across social media, including Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and wherever you pod. We hope you enjoyed the episode, and we'll see you next time.